attack strategy that will actually work. Unfortunately, neither of the options seems to be available to them because their levels are too low. As a result, Zig suggests that the best option would be to die in a way that inflicts the least amount of pain. Naturally, our archer girl is both shocked and a bit disappointed to hear him say this. However, my man just stays down on the floor like a defeated soldier, claiming that there's nothing else they can do. Their levels are far too low, and he feels that they can't really find a strategy against the new attack pattern. Even though Zig has given up, Sia refuses to admit the same shameless behavior. She gets back on her feet and insists that the best thing they can do is to at least try and figure out the new pattern of attack. If they're going to fail anyway, the girl suggests that it's better to take up the challenge. The blacksmith tries to protest, reminding her that their levels are too low to take any risks, but the girl just cuts him off. Sia takes her bow instead and starts running out of their hiding spot. Before she leaves, she reminds Zig that she's at level 42 and he's at level 38. And by virtue of simple mathematics, combining their levels puts them at level 80, which is more than enough to defeat the boss. Not surprisingly, Zig finds this logic to be very flawed. He claims that it doesn't make sense, since that's not how the game works. However, she cuts him off once again, explaining that if they work together, things will certainly work out for them one way or another. While Zig cowers behind the rock, Sia sprints back into battle. She shouts for him to hurry up and join her, claiming that she'll be waiting for his backup. This is when we get a flashback, and the scene shifts to the real world where we see Kang's younger brother entering his room. Kang is lying on the floor, curled up under a blanket, and Hyan breaks the silence by confronting him about his sudden decision to drop out of college. He asks Kang how he thinks the rest of the family will react to such a decision, and my boy just stays mute the entire time. Eventually, Hyan reveals that their mother is crying out of concern for his future. But still, Kang refuses to say anything. So in the end, Hyan goes closer to his brother and reminds him of when they were younger. Back then, Kang used to beat up all the kids who would bully his younger brother. He reminds Kang how he was larger than the bullies back then, so they couldn't really do anything to him in return. That's when we finally see our hero's face, and discover that he's covered in bruises. Hyan suddenly points out that his once reliable brother is no longer the way he used to be. Now he's just a scrawny loser with a hunched back, and even looks creepy at first glance. The words finally start reaching his ears, when Hyan slaps him with the truth that he's no longer good at studying, and that the only thing he's good at is playing games. Eventually, Kang reaches his limit and he snaps at his little brother, asking him what the fuck he's trying to say. In response, Hyan tells him to notice the people around him. This statement hits him hard, because he knows exactly what his brother means. Hyan admits that he doesn't know what's going on with Kang, but asks him why he didn't consider telling him or any of his friends. But in the midst of saying this, the little brother corrects himself, pointing out that Kang has no friends. Once again, our hero tries to confront his younger brother, but before he can say anything, Hyan starts walking out of the room on his own. On his way out, he tells Kang that there are many things he can't do by himself, even if he may not believe it. Finally, he walks out of the room and leaves the door ajar. From outside the room, he tells our hero to come down and eat the kimchi stew that their mom has cooked up. He says this, and then tells Kang to hurry up because he'll be waiting. Sia said the same thing in the game, and it appears that it's what actually triggered the memory for Kang. Back in the game, we see a massive and powerful gust of wind blasting at the Berserk Golem. The hit takes out a whopping 97 points from the monster's health pool, and the archer exclaims in delight upon seeing it. Unfortunately, the joy is short-lived, because she's immediately notified that her mana pool is low and that she needs to rest. Apart from that, her stamina is also low, so she now needs to eat food if she's going to continue fighting. Even though she's exhausted, she smiles in satisfaction, knowing that she did her best. Although she's surprised that she's already reached her limit, the girl accepts her fate as the Berserk Golem attempts to smash her into the ground. Fortunately, before she can get planted into the ground, Zig suddenly arrives and pushes her out of the way to save her. The golem smashes the ground instead, and is bewildered when it sees that girl is not there. Meanwhile, on the other side of the dungeon, Zig thanks Sia for buying him some time. He gets back to his feet, revealing that he completely recovered his HP and stamina. The blacksmith then admits that Sia was right about what she said before. He now believes that since they're going to die anyway, they should at least put up a good fight. While saying this, one of the items in his inventory materializes in his hands. It's a pickaxe, presumably from his mining adventure. Zig declares that the battle is going to be all or nothing, and as the Berserk Golem tries to attack him, he charges back at it with an axe. With his renewed motivation and replenished stamina, our hero takes a big swing at the golem's hand and unleashes significant damage by removing a massive 180 points. This attack results in a part of the golem's arm exploding. Zig can't believe it worked, and is surprised to discover that pickaxes are the Berserk Golem's weakness. Zig finds it hard to believe it's true, because according to the system, the pickaxe doesn't have an attack power. To confirm, he decides to try hitting the golem's broken hand again with the weapon. Unfortunately, he keeps missing thanks to his low combat aptitude, and it gets really hard to find out. He starts to wonder if there was a big fluke the first time, but ultimately decides that it can't be the case because he saw that there was a system alarm earlier. Zig continuously tries to figure out how the pickaxe works, and just then, Sia calls out to him, warning him to look up. When he turns around, he sees the golem's other fist flying toward him. My man just sits there helplessly, knowing that he probably won't be able to dodge it. But just before his seemingly inevitable demise, Zig suddenly sees blue lines on the fist as it races toward him, which triggers yet another memory. The memory flashes across his mind, and he recalls a time when Pabuchi told him how ores are made of several different types of materials combined. He explained that even though they become one due to pressure, there are still some gaps between the various materials. The senior blacksmith admitted that Zig might not be able to tell at his level at the time, but he assured him that if he strikes the gaps accurately, he can mine something incredible. The keyword Zig got from the memory was mining, and with that in mind, he raises his pickaxe to clash with the golem's fist. This results in a massive surge of energy flowing through the golem's body, causing its entire arm to explode. Zig suddenly smirks at the golem, claiming that he's finally found his weak point, and judging by the horrified look on the golem's face, it's safe to say that our hero was right. Regardless, the giant stone monster isn't going down without a fight, so it tries to attack the blacksmith one last time. Unfortunately for the monster, the blacksmith now has the cheat code. Zig says the magic words again, and repeatedly strikes the golem with his pickaxe on all of its limbs, until they all explode in sequence and the monster is practically crippled. The golem's arms and legs are shattered to bits, while its angry head remains intact. And then, a notification pops up, informing Zig that he's succeeded in mining. He has obtained 10 marbles, and also increased his skill proficiency by 30. After seeing our hero's brilliant and magnificent display to defeat the giant berserk golem, the archer girl is stunned beyond belief. Her eyes pop out as she stares at him in awe, and the only thing she can say is incredible. What makes the accomplishment even more unbelievable is the fact that he managed to defeat the boss in Deborah Dungeon, despite being a production skill character. And that's besides the fact that he wasn't even up to the recommended level for the quest. Zig is clearly exhausted by now, but manages to stay upright so he can finish the quest. With a victorious grin on his face, he then points his pickaxe at the golem as it sits there like a big chunk of rock that it is. At this point, the golem already knows it's game over, so our hero proceeds to finish the job by landing his most powerful strike yet. The monster's fate is sealed by a massive explosion, and a tab pops up, confirming that Zig and Sia have defeated the berserk giant stone golem. After blowing up the berserk golem, Zig picks up one of the pieces and examines the rock. He realizes that his special ability to see the lines can also be used for mining. He thinks about how the lines were so faint earlier that he didn't even notice them, and they only became more obvious when he truly focused on finding them. Regardless of how the entire thing went down, Zig is pretty satisfied that he successfully hunted the Deborah Dungeon stone golem. He feels proud of his accomplishment, even when he hasn't seen that attack pattern before. Not to mention, it's even more impressive because he's not the skilled warrior character he used to be. Zig is about to start praising himself when Sia interrupts him with praises of her own. She calls him incredible, and is extremely astonished by the fact that he successfully hunted down the boss, even as a production skill character. She almost jumps on top of him in her excitement, and is so impressed by his feat that she can't even compose herself anymore. She places her hands on his shoulders, eagerly asking him how he was able to do it. She claims that she wants to know so she can be like him, but Zig casually laughs it off, telling him that it's a trade secret. Zig claims that he can't just easily reveal it to her, and while they're still standing there, their characters start to get transported out of the dungeon. And in a matter of seconds, Zig and Sia disappear from the place. The scene shifts, and we see the both of them reappear in some kind of factory or something. The game system drops them on their bottoms at the place, and they both wince in pain. Seeing the place for the first time, Sia becomes uncomfortable, so she asks Zig where they are. It appears that the blacksmith also hasn't been here before, but from his experience, he presumes that it must be the reward room since they just defeated the boss. While rubbing his head, he takes a look around and begins to doubt his earlier assumption. At this point, he's just as confused as the girl, and starts to wonder what the place is. By looking at some of the things around, like mob models and other scientific stuff, Sia suggests that they might be in some sort of lab where the mobs are created. Zig is quite certain that the Deborah Dungeon reward room doesn't look anything like this place, and he should know that since he's cleared the level over 100 times before. However, he begins to suspect that it might just be the rumored production room of Deborah. While Sia takes a look around the lab, Zig ponders deeply on why the game would bring them there. He wonders if that's where the game takes players who defeat the berserker giant stone golem, rather than the regular boss. It's his first time seeing all the contraptions in the lab, so he's really puzzled by all of them. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Sia calls out to him, revealing that she found a chest. Upon hearing this, Zig is immediately excited, because he already has a feeling he knows what that means. With a crazed look in his eyes, he's very excited to see that they might actually be in a reward room after all. When the archer opens the chest, the first thing she finds is a pair of goggles, which she wasn't expecting to see at all. It turns out that the goggles are actually a rare item, called Eagle Eyes. The item increases the user's accuracy by 20%, and increases their range by 30% as well. That's not all, because the user's finesse is also increased by 13. This rare artifact was created by the witch of the game world. Zig loses all self-control when he sees that the pair of goggles is a rare item, and desperately asks Sia to show it to him, but she just pushes him back, telling him she doesn't want to. After all, the girl believes that it's her reward to claim. When she refuses to let him have a look, the blacksmith just sighs and goes back to search for another reward. Zig expects that there are a minimum of 2 reward chests in the game, and it doesn't take long before he finds the second reward chest. When he does, he's so excited that he lifts it in the air and yells out that he's found it. Unfortunately, this great joy is short-lived when he opens the chest and finds a normal artifact. As you'd expect, he's both shocked and disappointed to see this. He holds the artifact in his hands and stares at it with great sadness. As if he isn't disappointed enough, a tab suddenly pops up, informing him that the artifact is called the Witch's Gloves. It grants the user an extra 3 points to their defense power and does the same for their magic power. Even though the reward is way below his expectations, Zig admits that it's better than nothing, so he puts the gloves on. The next thing he finds in the chest is a piece of paper that contains the first half of the Guardian blueprint. Upon completing the blueprint, the blacksmith will be able to learn how to make the black iron. The black iron is a Guardian robot of some sort, which Deborah attempted to create in the past. After reading the paper and realizing what it is, my man is really excited and pumped up. He's got his joy back, and is intrigued by the prospect of being able to create the robot using the blueprint. He practically has an artistic explosion in his head, as different ideas for the robot start flooding his mind. Zig thinks about how crazy the whole thing is, and wonders if he can start making the robot immediately. Before he can, however, he has to meet the necessary construction prerequisites, which are an alloy rank 5, assembly rank 3, and summoning magic rank 7. Zig then goes back to check the chest, and finds out the last thing inside is a book. He wonders if it's a skill book, but quickly finds out that it's a guide. The book in his hands is Hero Carwin's manual. It contains the records left behind by Carwin, the hero who defeated the witch Deborah. If a blacksmith reads the book, the skills of grain and arm break can be learned. Another tab pops up, revealing the grain skill learning prerequisites. They involve having the worst affinity for blacksmithing, Mount Lankle quest completion, and production skill rank 6. As for the arm break skill, the prerequisites involve mind skill, defeating the berserk giant stone golem, and having a skill rank 7. After reading this, Zig realizes that he's already eligible to use the grain skill, so he decides to use it right away. However, he still doesn't know what exactly he would use the skill for, so he gets back to reading. In the manual, Zig sees that Carwin wrote that he doesn't know anything else. However, he revealed that defeating the witch's golems wasn't an easy task. As for the giant stone golem, it was even more difficult. Carwin's manual reveals that he heard an important suggestion from one blacksmith. The blacksmith told him that all ores are made of several different types of materials combined, and that there are still some gaps between the various materials. It was those words that opened the path for Carwin to destroy the golem. He was then able to raise his ability to see the grains of all materials, and made a skill to amplify it further. This skill is what he then called the grain skill. As Carwin trained in the grain skill, he was able to learn how to destroy ores and armaments, which eventually led him to create the skill that he called arm break. Zig reads all of this with a lot of focus and interest, astounded by the idea of being able to destroy armaments, and finding the skill to be incredible. He continues reading the manual, and we see that Carwin's battle against the witch is not over. Deborah will return, bringing forth a powerful army with her, and this is the reason Carwin didn't destroy the witch's cave but chose to leave it as it is. Carwin hoped that those who came after him to train against the witch's dregs so that they could learn to fight against the army she would return with. After Zig is done reading, he thinks about what Carwin said about Deborah returning with an army. He's also intrigued that only a blacksmith can learn the hero Carwin's skills. Sia notices him deep in thought, so she goes to check up on him. She asks him if he doesn't like his reward, but she assures her that he does. What he feels for the reward goes beyond just liking, because he was able to learn a hidden skill with it. Hearing this, the girl suggests that it's time they left. Zig is speechless when he turns to look at her and sees the mess she made while searching for other rewards. When the duo makes it out of the dungeon, Sia first of all lets out a loud yawn and stretches her body. She admits that it feels like forever since she saw the sky, and without a doubt, our boy agrees. He points out that their quest in the dungeon took a whole day, and guesses that it's over 8 hours in the real world. Sia is a bit shocked to hear this, and thinks that she should log out of the game and return to her real life. Before she leaves, Zig tries to summon the courage to ask her something quite personal, but she beats him to it when she suddenly asks him what his age is in real life. The question takes him by surprise, but he manages to tell her he's 20 years old without stuttering. Hearing this, Sia stretches out her hand for a handshake and reveals that they're the same age. She smiles at him and suggests that they become friends henceforth. Zig is too stunned to move or even say anything. He just stands there moping, so the girl asks him if he's not going to shake her hand. He snaps out of his daze and after stuttering a bit, he shakes her hand. Sia then tells him that she's added him on the messenger and suggests that they meet up again next time. Suddenly, she tells him that she'll contact him once the test period is over, and Zig is shocked to hear this. She sees his expression and explains that her midterms are fast approaching, and that's the reason she wanted to quickly clear the dungeon before then. She claims that she could have still done it in 2 weeks since her tests will be over by then, but admits that she had a lot of fun with Zig. Anyway, the girl reveals the real reason she wouldn't be able to play, and now our boy feels incredibly stupid for blowing it out of proportion. The reason turns to be nothing more than a school exam, and holy fuck, I accidentally predicted the entire thing in the last episode. I know people won't believe me, but that was legit just a wild guess. The realization is quite annoying and Zig finds it hard to hide that he's upset. Sia sees this and teases him for being upset. She then playfully punches him in the face, but it leaves a noticeable mark. In fact, it cracks his fucking skull. The girl urges him to feel better, telling him that he's making it look like they would no longer be able to see each other again. She's still trying to cheer him up when Zig suddenly disappears. It turns out that her playful punch was so strong that it killed our boy, banishing him back to the real world. A tab pops up, informing her that she's killed Zig and will now be marked as a murderer. Of course, our archer girl is horrified to see what she has done. While she's freaking out about the whole thing, our boy asks her to pick up the items he left behind. She continues to panic because her username is now red, making it obvious that she's a murderer. She is afraid that it won't go away and continues to lose her mind while Zig tries to get her to pick up his items. Zig tries to calm her down, but she ignores him and he just gets frustrated. The scene shifts and we see a delivery truck arriving at Zig's house. It's the compensation that Dream Max Company decided to send him. Upon receiving the new capsule, Zig unpacks it and instantly activates it. As he's about to be transported to Arpedia Online, we find out that it's been a week since the stone golem hunt in Deborah Dungeon. Since then, he has grinded his grain skill, along with his crafting and repair skills. While using grain, he achieved a 100% success rate and the quality of the equipment turned out quite impressive. As a result, within a week, he became a famous master blacksmith in Balden. The moment Zig enters the game, he immediately notices how much more real the experience is, compared to when he was using the older capsule model. Before he can even take in the whole thing, he's surrounded by a sea of people, begging him to fix their items. Zig explains that he has to take a quest later in the day, so he can't really fix their equipment. The players are upset to hear this, and each of them even begins to demand that he only attend to them and ignore the rest. Suddenly, a man standing in the commotion claims that a Slime King showed up on the Urk Plains. This gets the attention of the crowd, and they're shocked to hear that the rare mob has showed up. Without skipping a beat, every single one of them bolts out of there, heading for the Urk Plains. However, the mysterious man who started the rumor remains behind, and Zig suddenly remembers that the Slime King doesn't spawn in the Urk Plains. The mysterious blonde-haired man then expresses his relief that he and Zig can now speak in peace, and reveals that he has come to scout our hero. This is when we head into a new chapter, and the scene shifts to Kang's life at the NLS Civil Servant Academy. While in class, another student notices something off about Kang. For some weird reason, he's writing insanely fast and the guy is finding it difficult to wrap his head around it. The other student watches in awe and concludes that Kang isn't your average guy. Eventually, he forgets about our hero and focuses on his work instead. You see, it's been a month since Bart's got hacked, and since then, our hero has attained fame like he had planned, but still hasn't found any clues about who the hacker might be. Because most of Bart's equipment were high-ranking gear, Kang felt it was necessary for him to raise Zig's level as quickly as possible. He looked for methods to do this quickly, and in the process, he found himself on the North Arc trade route exploration quest. In addition to leveling up quickly, Kang believes that the trade route will become established if he succeeds in the quest. If this happens, there will be a large change in Arpedia, to the point that it might end up needing an update. As such, Kang is determined to be there when the update comes out, and decides that he can't miss out on such a fun quest. The quest was recently announced by the King of Barkas, and it involves dispatching a delegation to establish a trade route with the dwarven country of North Arc. Because the quest giver is a king, according to the rumors, many predict that the rewards and experience will be incredible. It turns out that North Arc is the land of the dwarves, who are known for their excellent blacksmithing. So this makes Kang even more excited to go there as Zig, because he sees it as a great opportunity he shouldn't miss. However, the only problem is that system-wise, his reputation and level are too low, and he fears that if he applies for it at the moment, he will most definitely fail. Kang gets frustrated and vents out his anger by pulling on his hair. The classmate from earlier sees this and is now even more convinced that Kang isn't your regular dude. Anyway, the scene shifts back to the game, and we see the blonde-haired man talking to Zig. He introduces himself as the Gold Rush Merchant Union's Balden branch leader, Dylan. He reveals that he's come to recruit our hero, since he's become famous as Balden's King of Repair. He even promises to compensate Zig for his services, and politely requests that he come with him as well. Hearing this, Zig ponders for a while, mumbling and thinking that he should at least try and request something in return first. Dylan calls out to him, asking if he can hear him, but the blacksmith pretends that he cannot. Dylan then starts to get frustrated, because he knows that our guy is pretending. He points out that he heard him clearly fine just now, but he assumes that he's from a guild, so he tells him to just go away. Hearing Zig's assumption, Dylan laughs, realizing that the blacksmith doesn't know much about the gold rush. My man tries to argue that he knows about it, and while picking his nose in an annoying way, he states that the gold rush is a place that always ends up in second place among the merchant guilds. Even though Dylan is pretty offended by this, he covers his anger with a laugh and points out that even second place is quite amazing. He admits that they've been coming second for a long time, but he claims that it's about to change very soon. Dylan makes the bold statement that they'll soon come first, and then asks Zig if he's willing to join them and become among the best in Arpedia. To make the offer more tempting, the man reveals that they've specially set aside a signing bonus for our hero, but before he can finish his sentence, Zig bluntly states that he doesn't want to join them. Dylan doesn't hear him the first time and just keeps talking, until he suddenly realizes that my guy is blatantly rejecting the offer. Dylan is shocked and frustrated, so Zig points out that he doesn't want to join any guild, because he knows that they'll treat the blacksmiths poorly. He claims that the blacksmiths will be treated like white elephants, and not be included in the hunting parties. Zig further states that he will be forced to do menial chores, while all the goods they produce will be intercepted at very low cost. After making his point, Zig asks Dylan if their guild will be any different. Dylan laughs nervously and admits that those types of guilds don't exist, so he asks him what he thinks about becoming an associate of the Gold Rush. Zig is surprised to receive the offer, and Dylan admits that they usually only give the opportunity to high-level users. He explains that there's nothing much to becoming an associate, and tells him that he can simply register on the guild's homepage. Afterward, all he has to do is keep in touch from time to time with Dylan, who would act as his manager. Unlike formal members of the guild, the blacksmith won't have any obligations. In addition, whenever he offers gear to the guild or takes charge of some repairs, they'll repay him with money or information. Dylan explains that Zig can just start his relationship with the guild in this manner and join them officially if he ends up liking the benefits. On the other hand, if the guild isn't to his liking, Dylan reveals that he can just let them know of his intentions to reject their offer in 6 months. After he is done preaching and pitching his suggestions, the blacksmith thinks long and hard about his decision, to the point where it even gets a bit annoying. He eventually agrees and intentionally runs his snot on the man's shoulder to seal the deal. Unfortunately for Dylan, Zig isn't just agreeing to only the conditions presented by the Gold Rush Guild. He reveals that he has some terms of his own that must be accepted before he can join them for real. He suddenly tells the man to listen to his requests, and the latter is immediately taken aback by this twist in the plot, because he already thought he had sealed the deal. The scene then shifts, and inside a cart, we see a conversation between Dylan and another guild member. As it turns out, they all seem to believe that they're giving the blacksmith too much special treatment for no reason, especially